And so,
like my art education and all, I mean, I just go briefly into something or...
Yeah. So, yeah, just go... wing.
I should have that at home for dusting.
Probably what I should use it for.
How much of my body, it's just so my hands can do whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, so...
I will speak English now.
Yeah, okay. And maybe, how old were you when you came, and what was, did you go to school, or what was you?
No, actually, I was married. I married and then I arrived and lived in Western Mass and had 2 children. So are we?
Yeah, that's good. And so maybe you could, it'd be interesting to know your journey to become a painter, how you happened.
My creative abilities were at a very early stage. Primary drawing, cartooning, and upsetting public, officials by using house walls.
Using what?
House walls. I was a graffiti artist at age 7. And then once I had paper, and I lived in what was East Berlin when I began. And so whenever paper was available, I always had a pencil. I basically, when I arrived, things were very difficult post-war, and we lived in East Berlin. So we escaped in 1958 to West Berlin and then into West Germany. And we went through refugee camps for a few years and then settled. And my mother placed me into an apprenticeship because my being an artist was just not the right time during that time. So I went to a business apprenticeship, which really was great in that I had my own gallery and I could do the marketing. And I shocked my accountant. He thought I would walk in with a shoebox full of stuff, and I had the spreadsheet, precision German. But that's the other part of me. So from sharp focus realism, I just continued, and people and viewers at times, especially men, would just say, the works were so realistic you could take something off the canvas. The reflective lighting, I was obsessed with it. So several times I was asked, why don't you just take a photograph? So I left Western Mass. My children all went off to college. I have 3 adult children, and they're all visual. They all have degrees in one way or another. So I decided to move to Oldham. I always wanted to be in a marshland, and also the surroundings in East Berlin, all waterways and very similar to Oldham. And I thrived there, and my work changed from realism to impressionistic to expressionistic, and then I just totally let go. I was very shy still, but what I did for my oldest son's birthday, I painted a 6-foot geranium, which someone gave me to take care of it while he was traveling. So I painted this 6-foot geranium and titled it June 7th, the day of my son's birthday. So from then on, I just let go, and I stopped thinking and just went into myself, exposing myself to nature. And when I was in nature, everything happened. I used to kayak up, but mainly using a rowing shell And I did not pay attention to what was above the water or my surroundings. I paid attention to what was bumping underneath the rowing shell, and had weird little fish paintings, which were really fun. So I moved from, my children were all out of state, mostly Boston and up in Maine, and so I felt free enough to move down to the shoreline. I lived in Old Saybrook and basically Old Lyme. And then I moved to Essex and had my very own gallery. It was in a flood zone and very affordable. And the owner of the building was right across from Essex Island Marina, and he had for rent sign, and it was just before Memorial Day. So I told him, I said, you know, my art would look much better in here than your for rent sign. So I had a girlfriend and several fans and buckets of paints, and within 3 days I opened my gallery. And I did very well. A lot of foreigners, and so, but I knew the river, and also the wind kicked up, and I was up on Pratt Street, looked down, and I had whitecaps in front of my gallery. So that was the end of it. So,
did you lose any work? Was it?
No, I had it all planned. I had a banquet table, a toilet tank could hold so much. It was all pre-planned, just in case, because I knew the river.
So we should, just one last, maybe what you said when we first met was so striking about your being born and your you've been hustled down to a shelter. So maybe you just recount that that's pretty
Well,
dramatic.
we're going to back up a little bit and go back to my arrival in this world. We lived in Berlin, and it was during the war, and my mom was pregnant with a 10-pounder. And somehow she found a midwife, and I was born, and then they immediately ran me down into the bomb shelter. And the city was being bombed, and then my mother was taken down as well, and we were reunited. But I think this is where my attitude began in terms of, I'm not feisty, but I have an attitude, but it's a good attitude. But also being from Berlin, we all had an attitude. And also if something took a sentence to say, in Berlin, you bring it down to, you would not, at the most, you would reduce it to 3 words, and with the same meaning, of course. But nothing was lost in conversation. But that was just our way of fast life, and very cultured, very exciting, and my dad taught me how to dance a tango, and what was so wonderful, the river Spree ran right through the city and also beyond, and we used to, on Sundays, go there for dessert or a light meal, and then they would have music, and this is where my dad was an excellent dancer. He taught me how to dance. And also, I want to go to Argentina to dance the Argentine tango.